A heated family argument between 3 generations of women in Sioux City, Iowa, ended in murder in October of 2023 when a mother and grandmother were stabbed to death with a butcher knife inside her own apartment. 77-year-old Suzette Ochibone was having a verbal disagreement with her daughter, 59-year-old Angela Bino, and granddaughter, 32-year-old Jessica Bino, when the mother-daughter pair began beating the elderly woman with their fists. A witness called the police when they saw the suspects trying to move Ochibone's body into the trunk of a car. Officers found the senior citizen dead in the parking lot of the apartment building and proceeded to arrest Angela and Jessica on suspicion of first-degree murder. During questioning, Angela admitted to striking her mother in the head, chest, and face with a candlestick while pointing the finger at Jessica as the stabber. Both women remain behind bars at the Woodbury County Jail with bail set at $500,000. Number 19. Natalie Fonseca and Nafis Reynolds. In October of 2023, a Florida couple was accused of luring a man to his death in a disturbingly violent robbery plot. According to prosecutors, 25-year-old Natalie Fonseca and 31-year-old Nafis Reynolds met the victim on social media. Fonseca agreed to meet up with the man for a date and brought along Reynolds, whom she introduced to the man as her uncle. During the early morning hours, the victim flagged down an Escambia County deputy in a parking lot near the Escambia River. He was bleeding and covered with injuries, including multiple cuts to his throat. The man told police that Fonseca and Reynolds visited him at his house. At some point, they decided to take a drive. During the ride, the suspects attacked the victim and threatened his life. They took turns cutting his throat and eventually shoved him off a bridge, making off with his phone, shoes, money, and car. Police seemed shocked that the man not only survived the fall from the bridge and the slashes to his throat, but that he was also able to swim to shore and seek help. Fonseca and Reynolds were charged with attempted murder, armed carjacking, armed robbery, and kidnapping. They remain in custody at the Escambia County Jail while awaiting trial. Number 18. Michael Mulgrew. Cheryl and Eugene Mulgrew tried their best to help their mentally ill and chronically unemployed 34-year-old son Michael. In late 2023, the couple noticed that Michael was becoming symptomatic. Hoping to get him the help he needed, 69-year-old Cheryl called the police, who sent a mobile psychiatric screening unit to the family's home in Barnegat, New Jersey. By the time emergency responders arrived, Michael had left the house on foot. Later that evening, Cheryl called the police again and told them that Michael had calmed down. She said she planned to take her son to a doctor in the morning, and the conversation ended. The next morning, 911 dispatchers received another call from Cheryl, who asked them to send the police to her residence. Officers arrived to find blood on the front door and trailing through the house to the master bedroom, where they found Cheryl and Eugene dead from multiple stab wounds, with the murder weapon laying nearby. Michael was found in a wooded area nearby and taken into custody a few hours later. During questioning, he admitted to being a regular drug user and mentioned that he had suffered a bout of drug-induced psychosis 5 years earlier while living in Vietnam. He claimed that he believed his parents were going to hurt him when he left the house the previous day. When he returned later that night, he got into a heated argument with Cheryl and Eugene because they asked him to do some chores. After killing his parents, Michael filled a backpack with some bottled water, a towel, and a book to read and hid in the forest before eventually crossing paths with the police. He remains held without bail amid the ongoing case. Number 17. Dimitri Frano. During what was meant to be a romantic trip to Sardinia, Italy, in 2017, 25-year-old Erica Preti yelled at her obese boyfriend Dimitri Frano for getting crumbs in their hotel room bed. Frano erupted in a fit of rage and fatally attacked Preti with a knife. He initially claimed that Preti had been killed in a robbery gone wrong, but later admitted that he stabbed the woman dozens of times after she threw a paperweight at him, landing himself a 30-year prison sentence for murder. Frano was around 260 pounds when the punishment was imposed in 2019, but he managed to avoid starting his sentence until April of 2022, thanks to COVID-related delays. Over the following year, his weight ballooned to 440 pounds, raising concerns about the effects of the prison's high-calorie diet on his health, in addition to his tendency to overeat. He's also a chain smoker, which only added to the authorities' fears that prison might kill him. In late 2023, a court ruled to release him on medical grounds, noting that it had become difficult for Frano to get around without crutches or a wheelchair. Unable to provide him with a healthier diet, the authorities decided he was better off serving the rest of his sentence on home confinement at his parents' house. Preto's family was understandably outraged by the decision to free the woman's killer. Unfortunately, it appears as though they had no say in the situation. Number 16. Yu Jong. In June of 2023, a 23-year-old Korean true crime enthusiast named Yu Jong decided to kill someone simply for the sake of finding out what it felt like to commit a murder. Posing as a high school student, she contacted a college student who was working as an English tutor and arranged to visit the teacher's apartment in the port city of Busan for lessons. To make herself seem like a real student, Jung bought a fake school uniform and wore it to the 26-year-old woman's home, where she stabbed and dismembered the victim. Jung then changed into the victim's clothing, loaded some of the victim's body parts into a suitcase and took a taxi to a wooded area where she dumped the luggage. In a rookie attempt to prevent anyone from identifying the slain teacher's body, she kept several of the victim's personal effects, including the woman's wallet and cell phone. By then, Jung had already raised the suspicions of the taxi driver who drove her to the dump site by acting unusual. The cab driver called the police to report Jung's bizarre behavior, and she eventually turned herself in at her family's urging. During a search of Jung's property, police found several garbage bags containing more of the victim's dismembered body parts. They also noticed that the suspect was eerily calm for having just murdered someone in cold blood. A police spokesperson told local news outlet The Chosen Ilbo that Jung's obsession with killing began with an interest in murder-related books and TV shows. In preparation for the crime, she had rented library books on the topic and researched information about how to hide a body. She contacted more than 50 prospective victims before finding one who was willing to meet alone and in private. The spokesperson said that Jung had expressed remorse for her crime and was undergoing tests to determine if she's a psychopath. Prosecutors pursued the death penalty, but Jung begged for mercy and insisted that she suffered from hallucinations and other symptoms of mental illness, ultimately landing herself a life sentence. Number 15. Bow Meister. Started in the late 1980s, a married Indiana businessman and father of three named Bow Meister hunted gay men and teenagers. Using the alias Brian Smart, he targeted his victims at bars and lured them to his sprawling 18-acre farm in Westfield, where he murdered them and hid their remains. Bow Meister's crimes went unnoticed until his teenage son found a human skull on the property. Even after the discovery, his wife initially refused to let law enforcement search the farm. As the evidence against Bow Meister piled up, she eventually changed her mind and divorced him. When police were finally able to search the property in 1996, they found the remains of several victims. In the meantime, Bow Meister fled to Canada, where he died shortly after a warrant was issued for his arrest. He never admitted to any of the murders. Nobody knows how many people Bow Meister killed. Thousands of charred and dismembered bone fragments have been found on the farm, and authorities believe he claimed at least 24 victims. So far, the bones have yielded 12 separate DNA profiles, including 4 that remain unidentified. The remains sat in storage for years before law enforcement decided to reopen the case. Nearly 30 years after Bow Meister's death, the efforts to identify the bones continue. In late 2023 and early 2024, the Hamilton County Coroner's Office identified victim Alan Livingston, who vanished in 1993 at the age of 27, and 34-year-old Manuel Resendez, who went missing in 1996. The 4 unidentified profiles have been sent to the FBI's Forensic Genetic Genealogy Lab, where efforts are being made to identify the victims through the DNA of their relatives. Number 14. Daniel Klein. While performing a welfare check at a home in Upper Chichester, Pennsylvania in April of 2024, police found an elderly woman covered in maggots and dried feces. She had become fused to her bedsheet and was in critical condition. The discovery came after a neighbor told law enforcement that they hadn't seen the woman or her son, 51-year-old Daniel Klein, for months. Packages had stacked up on the front porch of their home, and nobody answered when the neighbor knocked on the front and back doors. Nobody responded when the police rang the doorbell and knocked, prompting the officers to look inside through a sliding glass door. After noticing trash and flies on the floor, they became concerned that there might be a dead body in the home and decided to force their way inside. Klein emerged as the cops entered the house and claimed his mother was sleeping. He took the officers to her room, where they found her breathing but unconscious. According to police, Klein said he was his mother's primary caretaker and that the elderly woman had not gotten out of bed for several weeks. But based on the condition she was found in, investigators believe she may have been confined to the bed for months. The senior citizen was taken to the hospital, where she died a few days later. Klein was charged with felony neglect of a dependent person and recklessly endangering another person. He remains held in custody while awaiting the outcome of his case. Number 13. Taquan Jamot. 29-year-old Shirley Rodriguez was leaving her apartment building in Manhattan's Washington Heights neighborhood at 5:30 a.m. one morning in 2024 when a man emerged from hiding and viciously murdered her in a crazed knife attack. Identified by police as the woman's ex-boyfriend, 33-year-old Taquan Jamot, the attacker stabbed Rodriguez at least 10 times in the face, arms, and torso as she cried out, screaming, "Ty, why me?" During her final moments, Rodriguez entered the building's lobby and buzzed her apartment to get the attention of her mother and sister. As she lay dying, she told family members who had attacked her. According to prosecutors, the former couple had broken up just a week earlier. Surveillance footage appeared to show Jamot hiding behind cars for several hours as he waited for Rodriguez to leave for work. He was arrested at a relative's home in the Bronx the day after the killing and remains held without bail at Rikers Island on charges of second-degree murder and criminal mischief. Number 12. Josh Gilder. Over a 6-month period, started in early 2023, a homeless 23-year-old British man named Josh Gilder stole pacifiers from at least 5 children in and around Harlow, Essex. He was eventually arrested on 5 counts of theft, 3 counts of assault, and a public order offense. According to prosecutors, Gilder often took the pacifiers right out of the victims' mouths. His defense attorney, Mary Buxton, argued in court that her client had never been weaned off pacifiers and that he used them to soothe himself while living in a tent. Gilder was convicted, as charged, and sentenced to 14 months in jail. Number 11. Laquisha Jones. In a disturbing act of unprovoked violence that was partially captured on camera, in July of 2018, a woman beat 92-year-old Rodolfo Rodriguez in the face with a brick while he took a walk in Los Angeles. A bystander, Misbel Borjas, snapped a photo of the suspect holding the brick in her hand and filmed footage of the dazed victim covered in blood. Later identified as 30-year-old Laquisha Jones, the attacker could be heard yelling at Rodriguez to go back to his country before she fled the scene. Police eventually caught up with Jones and arrested her for attempted murder and assault with a deadly weapon. Later that year, she pleaded guilty to a reduced elder abuse charge and received the maximum 15-year prison sentence. Number 10. Wade Wilson. 35-year-old Christine Melton was found murdered in her Cape Coral, Florida home in October of 2019. She had been strangled to death. Later that day, 43-year-old Diane Ruiz was found strangled to death in an empty lot behind a Sam's Club store. She had vanished hours earlier while walking home from her job and had been repeatedly run over by a vehicle. The evidence in both cases led investigators to a 25-year-old Wade Wilson, who initially denied murdering the women. Wilson's father, Stephen Testaseca, told police that his son had confessed to the slayings in a phone call asking him for help. He would later testify that Wilson showed no remorse for his actions. When the case finally went to trial in 2024 after years of delays, Testaseca took the stand for the prosecution. He testified that during the phone call, Wilson described taking Melton home from a bar, killing her, and stealing her car. He also admitted to luring Ruiz into the vehicle by asking for directions, then strangling her and running over her body in an attempt to make her look like spaghetti. After killing the two women, Wilson broke into someone's house and got drunk. His father offered to send him an Uber and asked for the address, which he immediately turned over to U.S. Marshals. Wilson eventually surrendered to law enforcement at Testaseca's urging and spent the next 5 years awaiting trial on first-degree murder charges. During that time, his face became covered in tattoos, including a swastika beneath his eyes, the words "ha ha ha" on his cheek, and skeleton-like stitches extending from his mouth. The court also heard from Wilson's ex-girlfriend, Melissa Montanez, who met up with the accused killer the day before the murders. She told the jury that Wilson stole her car. When she met up with him to retrieve the vehicle, he beat her mercilessly. Montanez was convinced she was going to die that day, but police reached the scene before Wilson could kill her. By then, Wilson already had an extensive criminal history, which included multiple cases of violence against women. He had also served several prison sentences for burglary and theft and was on felony probation at the time of the murders. The only motive prosecutors were able to provide for the killings was that Wilson killed just to kill. In June of 2024, Wilson was found guilty as charged. A jury will now decide whether he will spend the rest of his life in prison or face the death penalty, which requires an 8 out of 12 majority vote in the state of Florida. Number 9. Gareth WI Jones. Mother of 4 Rhiannon Bragg met mechanic Gareth WI Jones in 2014 while stranded along a roadside in North Wales with a flat tire. Jones stopped to help her and they soon began dating. 5 years later, Bragg ended the relationship, but Jones refused to accept that it was over and began stalking and harassing her relentlessly. Bragg reported her ex's behavior to law enforcement multiple times, but they were initially hesitant to arrest Jones. She soon began to fear for her life and spent every waking moment feeling like she was being watched and wondering when Jones would strike next. Police arrested Jones 3 times. The court temporarily revoked his guns, but he got them back, and the authorities failed to take any truly meaningful action against him. In the meantime, Bragg fell into a deep depression as she became increasingly convinced that the stalking would never end. Several months after the breakup, Jones went to Bragg's home and waited in the bushes for her to return from work. As Bragg approached the residence, he emerged from his hiding spot and held her at gunpoint for the next 8 hours. Bragg survived the ordeal and Jones was finally hit with serious criminal charges. The police admitted they could have done more in the months leading up to the incident, and that it might have prevented Bragg from being held hostage. Jones was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison for stalking and making death threats. In 2023, Bragg learned that her ex would be released at the end of his term, despite the parole board ruling that he posed a continued threat to public safety. In a desperate attempt to raise awareness about what she described as a broken system that had failed her, Bragg expressed her anger on national television and called for changes to the legal system. During an interview with Good Morning Britain, she wondered what the authorities would tell any future victims, knowing they could have kept Jones behind bars. Whether or not he reoffends remains to be seen. Number 8. Philip Brewer and Christina Hardy. 74-year-old Curtis Engeland met 47-year-old Christina Hardy on a dating app in early 2024. During their second date, he invited the woman to his home in Mercer Island, Washington, to watch a movie. He fell asleep during the film and awoke to find his wallet, keys, and cell phone missing. Hardy was also gone, and the senior citizen soon discovered that someone was draining thousands of dollars from his bank account. Engeland reported the theft to law enforcement. A month later, he vanished. His roommate reported finding a strange note on Engeland's bedstand about having to travel on short notice and showed police similar text messages. The correspondence didn't match Engeland's typical wording, and the elderly man's luggage was still at the home, yet his car was gone. On Engeland's laptop, the roommate discovered a series of alarming financial transactions, including newly purchased electronics and other items. Investigators traced some of the unauthorized activity to the PayPal account of a 32-year-old man named Philip Brewer. He and Hardy were captured on surveillance footage as they carried out some of the transactions inside a Fred Meyer store. The pair had also used Engeland's money to buy a used car on the day of his disappearance. Brewer and Hardy said that Engeland had rented his basement out to them as they got on their feet after falling on hard times. They also claimed that Engeland had given them access to his financial account so they could pay his bills while he traveled. Engeland's roommates and family insisted that he would never rent his home to strangers or give them access to his money, but without any knowledge of the missing man's whereabouts, the police released the suspects for the time being. Using cell phone data, they eventually located Engeland's body roughly 100 miles from his home in Cosmopolis. A source close to Brewer and Hardy told police that the couple had injected Engeland with fentanyl and put him in the trunk of his car. When they reached the remote site and discovered that he was still alive, they stabbed him in the neck. Following the discovery of Engeland's body, authorities located the couple in Riverside County, California, and arrested them on suspicion of murder. According to the most recent updates on the case, they were being held on $5 million bail while awaiting extradition to Washington. Number 7. Soby Hassan. Just days before Christmas in 2021, 56-year-old Gregory Evans had a seizure doing a trip to the Princess Market convenience store in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Instead of helping him, 68-year-old store clerk Soby Hassan beat the man with a stick as he struggled to steady himself against the store's counter. Horrifying footage showed Hassan striking Evans in the shoulders, hands, and legs while yelling at him to get out of the store and calling him a derogatory name. Bystanders took him outside and called an ambulance. The video spread like wildfire, prompting outraged demands among locals for Hassan's arrest. Protesters even gathered outside the store and started a petition demanding the closure of the business. Evans' sister, Edith Cooper, told the Rocky Mount Telegram that her brother was unable to defend himself due to his convulsion. She said that Evans never bothered anyone and urged angry locals to be patient while the police investigated. Hassan eventually pleaded guilty to simple assault. He received a 45-day suspended jail sentence and was ordered to complete a year of probation. Number 6. Stephen Glosser and Caleb Kinsey. After moving to the United States from South Africa, single mum Larissa Apperson spent years working hard and living modestly to save up for a house. In 2023, she found her dream house in Bryan County, Georgia, and used her hard-earned money to buy the property outright. She looked forward to spending many happy years there with her young daughter and their new puppy, but someone blew their house up with a homemade bomb just 12 hours after they moved into the residence. The 5 a.m. blast was so powerful that it sent bricks flying from the structure and gouged a 2-by-2-foot crater in Apperson's driveway. Thankfully, nobody was injured, but more than half the house was destroyed. Bryan County Sheriff Mark Crow compared the scene to the aftermath of a tornado, saying he had never seen anything like it in his 26 years of working in law enforcement. Apperson vowed to overcome her newfound hardship and repair the home. In the meantime, investigators worked to identify the culprit. In March of 2024, federal authorities announced the arrests of Air Force veterans and roommates Stephen Glosser and Caleb Kinsey, who lived together in Savannah, Georgia. According to prosecutors, 37-year-old Glosser met Apperson through a dating app. In 2022, they had a brief and casual fling but stopped talking to one another after the situation went sour. Later that year, Glosser and 34-year-old Kinsey allegedly spent a month planning the bombing and other horrific crimes. The men are accused of plotting to scalp Apperson, send dog feces and dead rodents to her address, shoot arrows into her front door, and release a python into the home in hopes that it would eat her child. In a criminal complaint, the U.S. District Attorney's Office claims that the suspects located Apperson's home through internet searches. According to authorities, Glosser and Kinsey conducted extensive surveillance on the victim and built the bomb using tannerite they bought off the internet. Investigators also reportedly found evidence of a plan to blow up a courthouse and to target another victim. Both defendants are facing charges of federal stalking, conspiracy to use an explosive to commit a felony, use of an explosive to commit a felony offense, and possession of an unregistered destructive device. The men are also facing state-level charges of arson and unlawful possession of an explosive. If convicted on the federal charges alone, they could each face up to 30 years in prison. It's unclear whether they're being held in custody as they await the outcome of the case. Number 5. Michael Arnold. 42-year-old Cassandra Willers met her accused stalker, 65-year-old Michael Arnold, in 2019 when he became a regular customer at her restaurant in Schuylerville, New York. Not long after that, Willers began receiving harassing and threatening emails containing inappropriate photos of a man who appeared to be Arnold, along with overhead images of her house. The already disturbing situation took a terrifying turn in 2020 when she received a package containing a threatening letter along with photos and addresses of her loved ones and a warning that karma would soon be delivered. Arnold was charged with harassment, but the case was dismissed in exchange for his agreement to stay out of trouble and abide by an order of protection banning him from contacting or going near Willers. A social media account believed to belong to Arnold continued posting slanderous and intimidating content about Willers, but the district attorney hesitated to pursue additional charges, noting that the posts constituted a gray area when it came to determining whether they violated the protective order. According to Willers, the stalking and harassment escalated dramatically when the order of protection expired. She accused Arnold of snapping photos of her outside her business and home and of circling his plane over her residence at an extremely low altitude at all hours. Arnold was finally charged with stalking in 2023 and a new order of protection was issued. He was banned from flying and released on bail under strict orders to leave Willers alone, but the prohibited contact and incessant flyovers continued. A few months later, authorities in neighboring Vermont charged Arnold with aggravated stalking, violation of an abuse prevention order, resisting arrest, giving police false information in order to implicate another, and attempted impeding of a public officer. He posted $5,000 bail and was once again turned loose 24 hours after walking out of jail. Arnold was charged in New York with 9 new counts, including aggravated contempt of court. After posting bail and being released, again, he denied the stalking allegations to reporters, describing the victim as a publicity hound. In early 2024, Arnold was arrested on suspicion of waiting for and following Willers in violation of the protective order, added new counts of criminal contempt and stalking to his growing list of charges. This time, the judge detained him without bail. He pleaded guilty to felony criminal contempt and was sentenced to 6 months behind bars with credit for time served. Records show that Arnold was released on June 1st and is serving a 5-year probation term. The judge warned him that if he has any contact with the victim, he'll go to prison for up to 4 years. Whether he obeys the no-contact order remains to be seen. Number 4. Jud Sanson. During the pre-dawn hours one morning in June of 2024, NYPD officers pulled over a Ford Explorer with an obstructed license plate in the Elmhurst neighborhood of Queens, just blocks from LaGuardia Airport. Inside the vehicle, they found an arsenal of weapons and other suspicious items, including a loaded handgun, 9 loaded magazines, a stun gun, 2 axes, a collapsible baton, a Guy Fawkes mask, a bulletproof NYPD vest, and a transit authority vest. Given the nature of the items, the suspect's proximity to a major airport, and the extremist views that were expressed on social media by the driver, 29-year-old Jud Sanson, investigators believe that he was planning something awful. The baton was etched with disturbing messages including, "You left me no choice. I am sorry. you're gonna learn today, and the Arabic term for God forgive me. According to police, Sanson's license plate appeared to be deliberately altered, effectively turning the vehicle into a so-called ghost car. These types of practices are typically associated with criminal activity, furthering law enforcement's suspicions that there were sinister plans in place. During the first few minutes of the traffic stop, Sanson reached nervously beneath the driver's seat, where the loaded 9mm handgun was later found. He claimed he was on his way to visit his uncle, but by then, the officers had already spotted a knife strapped to his leg and some other suspicious items, giving them probable cause to search the vehicle. Sanson currently faces weapon and ammunition-related charges. He flashed a wide grin at a swarm of reporters as he left the police station in handcuffs and was led to the courthouse. According to the most recent updates on the case, the investigation is ongoing. Sanson's defense attorneys urged the judge to set a reasonable bail amount, but for now he remains held without bail at Rikers Island. Number 3. Donald Britz. In early 2023, someone shot 36-year-old single mother of 2, Katie Arnold, through an open window as she smoked in the bathroom of her Blountville, Tennessee home. She died at the scene as her killer made his way to a neighbor's house where he murdered 56-year-old Barry Countess and stole the victim's car. Police apprehended the suspect a short while later after he lost control of the vehicle and crashed. Arnold's loved ones were not surprised to learn that law enforcement had identified the killer as her recent ex, Donald Britt. She and Britt had met at work, and Arnold had recently ended the relationship following a domestic violence incident. Katie's mother, Donna Arnold, told local station WJHL that her daughter felt unsafe after the breakup and had noticed Britt driving around near their house, aware that Britt was stalking her and too scared to go anywhere else. Katie had started coming straight home from work at the time. Donna was unaware that Britt had multiple previous domestic violence convictions on his record. In August of 2023, Britt pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder and other charges relating to the deaths of Katie Arnold and Barry Countess. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Today's topic was requested by Tale is High Notes in Chain 5621, Cameo Swanson 9388, and BSTQ1KZ. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Amy Betro. Sikandar Ali was pulling up to his home in Birmingham, England, in September of 2019 when a woman in a hijab calmly approached him and pointed a gun at his head. When she tried to pull the trigger, the gun jammed, giving Ali a life-saving opportunity to throw his car into reverse and flee the scene, unaware that he was being lured to his planned murder. Ali had arranged to meet with a potential buyer of a car he was selling. The next morning, the same woman went to the home of Ali's father, Aslat Mahmoud, and fired 3 gunshots from outside. She also text messaged Mahmoud, telling him to quit playing hide and seek and continue to threaten him after she left the scene. Thankfully, nobody was struck by the gunfire. By the time investigators identified the hired hit woman as 44-year-old US national Amy Betro, she had returned home to Chicago. According to British authorities, Betro works as a graphic designer by day and is not a professional assassin. She was recruited to kill the victims by 56-year-old Mohammed Aslam and his 30-year-old son, Mohammed Nazir, who was seeking vengeance over a violent dispute with Aslat Mahmoud and his relatives that had occurred the previous year. Nazir and Aslam were found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder in June of 2024 and are currently awaiting sentencing. Betro remains at large and is currently being sought in an international manhunt in hopes that she'll be caught and extradited to Britain to face criminal charges. Number 1. Mark Adams Prto. In 2023, the FBI received a tip from someone claiming that an Arizona gun dealer had tried recruiting them into his efforts to start a race war, sparking a months-long investigation. According to federal prosecutors, 58-year-old Mark Adams Prto believes that the country's leaders will declare martial law shortly after the upcoming 2024 presidential election, and he wanted to commit a massacre beforehand. His goal was to kill as many African Americans as possible at an upcoming rap concert in Atlanta, due to his belief that the city's black population has turned the state of Georgia into a so-called hot hotbed of crime. Prto avoided scrutiny from gun regulators by paying cash for semi-automatic weapons that he planned to use in his sinister plot. He obtained some of his firearms at gun shows where he met the person who reported him to the authorities. After receiving the tip, an undercover FBI agent worked their way into the plan by posing as a co-conspirator. According to court documents, Prto instructed the informant and the undercover to wear hoodies because he thought it would help them blend in with the crowd. He also informed them of his plans to shout Ku Klux Klan slogans during the crime and leave Confederate flags at the scene. Prto also reportedly planned to travel to Atlanta and stash guns near the crime scene ahead of the shooting. Thankfully, the plan was thwarted, and in May of 2024, Prto was arrested while driving to Atlanta to do reconnaissance. There were 7 guns in his vehicle and nearly 200 firearms were recovered from his home, including unregistered weapons that are illegal to own without registration. Prto was charged with multiple gun-related crimes, including transfer of a firearm for use in a hate crime. During questioning, he admitted that he had talked about committing a shooting but claimed that it was a fantasy that he had no serious plans to follow through with. He remains held without bail and could face up to 40 years in prison if convicted as charged. Thanks for watching. If you could go back in time to prevent one person from ever being born, who would you pick and why? Let us know in the comments section below.